Riverside County Courthouse, April 17th, 2018. 10:16 a.m. The mundane rhythm of justice plays out as Judge William Thornton reviews a motion to exclude evidence. In the fifth row sits 45-year-old Catherine Winters, a former librarian with no criminal record. Her eyes never leave the back of defendant Dominic Mercer's head. These past allegations are prejudicial, argues Mercer's attorney. They have no bearing on the current case. Mercer turns in his seat, scanning the gallery until his eyes meet Catherine's. He smiles, subtle, knowing. Catherine's hand slides into her purse. 3 shots crack through the air. "That was for Abigail," Catherine says calmly, placing the smoking .38 caliber revolver on the floor before officers tackle her. "What would you do if the justice system failed to protect your child? If the man who tortured and murdered your daughter might walk free on a technicality? Where is the line between justice and vengeance?" When Catherine Winters executed her daughter's killer in front of dozens of witnesses, she made a choice no parent should ever face. She traded her freedom for the certainty that Dominic Mercer would never hurt another young woman. At what point does a mother's grief transform into calculated revenge? Is 14 months of planning a sign of mental breakdown or cold determination? Today we examine the case that divided America and ask, was Catherine a vigilante criminal or a mother pushed beyond endurance by a broken system? If questions like these fascinate you, hit that subscribe button and join our True Crime Hunter community. Like this video to help others find this story. Abigail Winters collected broken things. Stray cats with missing ears. Vintage books with torn pages. People whom society had forgotten. At 22, Abigail stood on the precipice of a promising future. Final year nursing student with a 3.9 GPA. Dean's List 4 semesters running. Already accepted into the competitive trauma care residency at Riverside Memorial. She possessed a rare quality, Professor Miguel Hernandez recalled. Abigail understood that healing involves more than medicine. It requires genuine human connection. 3 evenings each week, Abigail volunteered at the Riverside Community Shelter. Not for course credit or resume building, but because she believed everyone deserved dignity. She remembered everyone's name, Shelter Director Leanne Washington noted. When you're homeless, becoming invisible is the cruelest part. Abigail made people visible again. Catherine and Abigail shared an unbreakable bond strengthened by their Sunday dinner ritual. Every week without fail, they prepared meals together in Catherine's modest kitchen, talking about everything and nothing. "I raised her alone after her father died," Catherine later testified. "We weren't just mother and daughter. We were each other's constant." Catherine, the pragmatic librarian who categorized life by the Dewey Decimal System. Abigail, the idealistic caregiver who saw possibility in everyone. Different approaches to the same core values, kindness, integrity, and second chances. But Abigail's greatest strength would become her fatal weakness. Her classmate Jordan Fisher explained it best. Abby believed everyone had goodness inside them. You just had to be patient enough to find it. She couldn't comprehend that some people are hollow at their core, with nothing good to discover. This blind spot, this beautiful, fatal optimism, drew her directly into the path of Dominic Mercer. Dominic Mercer, 34, appeared at Riverside Community Shelter in December 2016. He carried a worn backpack, spoke softly, and kept his eyes down, the perfect portrait of quiet struggle. He told everyone he served 2 tours in Afghanistan, shelter volunteer Marcus Wong remembered. Said he was dealing with PTSD and temporary homelessness while waiting for VA benefits. The staff noticed how he spoke articulately about combat trauma, using precise terminology and sharing details that seemed authentic. He mentioned specific bases, operations, and the challenges of reintegration. None of it was true. Dominic Mercer had never served a day in the military. His real resume included 2009, convicted of aggravated assault against a girlfriend. 2012, convicted of assault and false imprisonment. 2014, convicted of attempted kidnapping of a college student. For this last offense, he served only 3 years of a 7-year sentence before being released early for good behavior. When Abigail mentioned her new shelter friend to Catherine during their Sunday dinner, maternal instinct flared. "There's something off about him," Catherine warned. "Be careful, Abby." Abigail dismissed her concerns with characteristic optimism. "Everyone deserves someone who sees the good in them, Mom," she replied, her voice gentle but firm. Over the following weeks, Dominic positioned himself where Abigail volunteered. He shared fabricated stories about his childhood, combat experiences, and hopes for recovery. Each calculated disclosure designed to strengthen their connection. By late January, they had exchanged phone numbers. Abigail began giving him rides after her shelter shifts, unaware that she was transporting a predator who had already identified his next victim. February 3, 2017. 11:42 a.m. Dr. Marilyn Owens checked her watch again. Abigail Winters had never missed a clinical rotation, not once in 3 years, yet her assigned hospital station remained empty for the second hour. "I called her 3 times, Dr. Owens told investigators. When she didn't answer, I contacted her emergency contact, her mother." At the library where she worked, Catherine felt an immediate chill upon receiving the call. She tried Abigail's phone repeatedly while driving to her daughter's apartment. 1:17 p.m. Catherine arrives, knocking frantically. 1:19 p.m. She uses her emergency key to enter. 1:22 p.m. She calls 911. The dispatcher recorded Catherine's call. "Something's wrong. Oh God, my daughter. Please hurry. Please." What Catherine found destroyed her existence. Abigail lay in her bathroom, strangled with her nursing school lanyard. The medical examiner determined she had been subjected to methodical torture lasting hours. The precise, calculated nature of her wounds indicated the killer wanted to prolong suffering rather than cause death quickly. "He kept her alive through most of it," Detective Roland Michaels stated. "This wasn't rage. This was premeditated cruelty." Catherine collapsed at the scene. First responders described her as catatonic, unable to speak or move. She required sedation before being transported to Riverside Memorial, the same hospital where her daughter had hoped to begin her residency. "In 20 years of homicide investigation, I've never seen a parent's grief manifest that way," Michaels later testified. "It wasn't crying or screaming. It was as if half of her had died along with her daughter." For 3 days, Catherine didn't speak. When she finally did, she asked a single question. "Who did this to my baby?" What warning signs do people miss when predators enter their lives? Have you ever had an intuition about someone that others dismissed? Share your experiences in the comments. Your insight might help someone else recognize danger before tragedy strikes. The evidence against Dominic Mercer mounted rapidly as detectives built their case. Security footage from Abigail's apartment complex captured Dominic entering with her at 7:13 p.m. and leaving alone at 2:47 a.m., nearly 7 hours later. His distinctive backpack appeared noticeably fuller upon exit. DNA evidence was conclusive, forensic analyst Dr. Linda Corey confirmed. "We found his genetic material under the victim's fingernails, indicating she fought back. Her blood appeared on his boots, which he failed to clean thoroughly." Police apprehended Dominic 2 days later at a bus station headed for Arizona. In his possession, Abigail's credit cards, laptop, and a silver locket containing a photo of her with Catherine. Most damning was a recording made by his cellmate after arrest. Using a contraband phone, he captured Dominic bragging about making the nurse beg before he finished her off. For Catherine, the arrest brought no comfort. The once vibrant librarian who organized community reading programs now sat motionless for hours, her eyes fixed on nothing. "It's like watching yourself become a stranger," she told her sister Rachel. "I don't read anymore. I don't garden. I just replay how much pain she was in, How frightened she must have been. Catherine attended every pre-trial hearing, silent in the back row. She observed Dominic's behavior with clinical precision, how he smirked during evidence presentations, how his eyes lit up when the prosecutor described Abigail's wounds. But as Catherine sat watching her daughter's killer, something inside her was changing, hardening into a terrible resolve that no one recognized until it was too late. As Dominic's trial date approached, Catherine Winters made two critical decisions that would reshape her destiny. First, she began weekly sessions with Dr. Natalie Park, a therapist specializing in trauma and grief counseling. Second, she purchased a .38 caliber revolver from a private seller who didn't require a background check. The therapy sessions served dual purposes. On the surface, Catherine appeared to be seeking help for her devastating loss. Beneath this facade lay calculated strategy. During sessions, she would discuss her anger, her fantasies of revenge. Dr. Park later revealed, "I never flagged these as concerning because they're normal expressions of grief. She appeared to be processing her emotions appropriately." Dr. Park noted Catherine's apparent progress, how she seemed to be moving from rage toward acceptance. "She had me completely fooled," Dr. Park admitted after the shooting. "I truly believed she was healing." Meanwhile, Catherine drove 3 counties away each weekend to a remote shooting range. Security footage shows her transformation from a nervous novice to a focused marksman capable of hitting a human-sized target repeatedly at 15 yards. She was methodical, range owner Frank Tillman recalled. Not chatty like most newcomers. She practiced for exactly 90 minutes each session, focusing on accuracy rather than speed. Between therapy and target practice, Catherine studied courthouse security. She attended 14 unrelated trials at Riverside County Courthouse, noting which entrances had metal detectors, which were staffed during peak hours, and which guards seemed most diligent. Court security officer Miguel Ramirez remembered her. "We assumed she was a law student or journalist. She blended in completely. Just another face watching the proceedings." 2 weeks before Dominic's trial began, Catherine wrote letters to her sister and parents, explaining her intentions. She mailed them with explicit instructions not to open them unless something happened to her. "I'm not suicidal," she wrote to her sister Rachel, "but I won't live in a world where he walks free. I can't risk that happening." The night before she delivered her verdict, Catherine checked into a budget hotel near the courthouse. In her room, she wrote one final letter, addressed to Abigail, then disassembled her weapon and placed the parts into a specially modified handbag with lead-lined compartments. Morning was just hours away. Dominic Mercer's trial began April 9, 2018. Public interest soared as media labeled him the shelter killer. Prosecutor Andrea Wilson built a methodical case against Dominic. "The evidence tells a clear story," she told the jury. "Security footage, DNA, possession of the victim's belongings, and partial confession all point to one conclusion: premeditated murder." Catherine attended each day, her face expressionless as prosecutors detailed how her daughter died. She sat through medical examiner testimony describing wounds inflicted to maximize pain. She watched jurors wince at crime scene photos. By the trial's 7th day, the prosecution's case appeared airtight. Then, defense attorney Lawrence Hoffman launched a strategy that would alter the course of justice. "Your Honor," Hoffman addressed Judge Thornton, "we move to exclude evidence of Mr. Mercer's prior convictions. These past allegations are prejudicial and would unfairly influence the jury. They have no bearing on the current case." The judge agreed to consider the motion, scheduling a special hearing for April 17th. A hearing that would determine whether jurors would learn about Dominic's violent history toward women. At 10:16 a.m. on April 17th, as arguments proceeded, Dominic turned in his seat to scan the gallery. His eyes locked with Catherine's, and his lips curved into a slight smile, a private moment of arrogance visible to no one else. Catherine later described this as her breaking point. "He looked at me like we shared a secret," she told investigators.
like Abigail's death was something intimate between us. At precisely 10:17 a.m., Catherine stood, withdrew her reassembled revolver, and fired 3 shots in rapid succession. Bailiff. Gun! Down! Everybody down! Defendant's attorney. Oh God, he's been shot! Catherine Winters. That was for Abigail. Judge Thornton. Order! Order! Someone restrain. Would you have done the same in Catherine's position? If the justice system seemed poised to fail your child, would you have taken matters into your own hands? Share your thoughts below. Dominic Mercer was pronounced dead at the scene. Catherine Winters was immediately taken into custody, offering no resistance. When asked if she understood her rights, she reportedly answered, "I understand everything now." Prosecutors charged Catherine with first-degree murder, citing the premeditated nature of her actions, the gun purchase, courthouse security reconnaissance, and written letters explaining her intentions. Her case fractured public opinion. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse daily, divided into opposing camps. She took justice into her own hands when the system failed, argued supporters carrying #JusticeForAbigail signs. No one can be judge, jury, and executioner, countered others. This undermines our entire legal foundation. Public Defender Maxwell Rodriguez made a compelling case for voluntary manslaughter, emphasizing Catherine's extreme emotional distress and psychological trauma. This isn't a story about a criminal, Rodriguez told jurors during opening statements. This is about a mother who witnessed a system that repeatedly failed to protect victims, and who couldn't bear to see it fail her daughter one final time. Unlike Dominic, Catherine testified in her own defense. The courtroom fell silent as she described finding Abigail's body, attending pre-trial hearings, and her complete loss of faith in the justice system. "I knew what I was doing was wrong," she testified. "But watching him sit there, knowing what he did to my child, knowing he might someday walk free to hurt someone else's daughter, it felt like the only choice I had left." After 4 days of deliberation, the jury found Catherine guilty of second-degree murder. Judge Patricia Ramirez sentenced her to 15 years with eligibility for parole after 8. As officers led her away, supporters lined the aisle. One father called out, "We would have done the same!" Catherine Winters' case prompted a critical examination of how the justice system handles violent repeat offenders. Advocacy groups highlighted Dominic's early release despite his history of increasingly brutal crimes against women. 6 months after Catherine's sentencing, the state legislature passed Abigail's Law, strengthening penalties for repeat violent offenders and eliminating early release possibilities for crimes involving torture or extreme cruelty. Today, Catherine serves her sentence at Lakewood Women's Correctional Facility. She leads a support group for incarcerated mothers who have lost children to violence, helping them navigate grief within prison walls. Her sister Rachel visits monthly, bringing letters from people across the country who view Catherine not as a murderer, but as a parent who acted on their most fundamental instinct to protect their child, even when it was too late. Dr. Natalie Park visited Catherine 9 months into her sentence for a singular conversation. "Do you regret what you did?" she asked. Catherine considered the question carefully. "I regret that Abigail lived in a world where someone like Dominic could hurt so many women and still walk around free. I regret that I had to make the choice I made. But no, I don't regret protecting the next girl who would have been his victim. I just wish I could have protected my own daughter." Catherine receives hundreds of letters each year. She answers each one with the same closing line. "Justice without mercy is cold. Mercy without justice is weakness. I chose justice. What would you choose?" If you want more true crime stories that explore profound moral questions about our justice system, subscribe to True Crime Hunter now. Each case we examine forces us to consider, what would we do when faced with impossible choices? Every justice system balances 2 competing principles, accountability and compassion. We demand consequences for those who harm others, yet believe in rehabilitation and second chances.
But what happens when this balance fails? When the scales tip so dramatically that dangerous predators return to society while victims remain forever silenced? Catherine Winters made a choice no mother should face. In 12 seconds, she guaranteed Dominic Mercer would never hurt another woman. For this certainty, she sacrificed her own freedom, career, and future. She transformed from librarian to inmate, from law-abiding citizen to convicted murderer, from mother to vigilante. Was Catherine justified in her actions? Did she uphold justice when institutions failed, or did she undermine the very foundation of civil society? The debate continues years later, with no easy answers. Her case forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the limits of our legal system and the depths of parental love. Justice without mercy is cold. Mercy without justice is weakness. I chose justice. What would you choose?